And of course, there is the validation. Once you get the contest, and even the fact that even if you don't win, that goes to show you the kind of level that you're willing to go at this. You're willing to compete. You are a competitor. Whether or not you made first, second, or third, you are willing to push yourself. So I think, in all honesty, if you told me that you entered a contest, that already shows me you have a little bit more, credibility. That you really are taking this serious. You're challenging yourself. You're pushing yourself past the comfortable and willing to see how you can grow. What are the cons? Oh, because there's always the cons. Time. I think I mentioned this before in the question and answer, that you have to be ready to give that amount of time. And friends, even though you may be involved in setting up the schedule for your club's contest, after that, it's really not up to you. You need to be ready to go to the next contest. If it's area, division, district, what day they call, what time they call, you need to be a part of it and be willing to shift your schedule around to make that happen. For me, when it came down to the district, I had a bridal shower that I had to attend. We were doing exercise out on the rocky steps of the Independence, I think it's Independence Mall, but we were out there in that area, and all of a sudden, in the middle of it, I said, guys, I got to go. I got a district conference to go to. And they didn't even know what Toastmasters was, trying to explain to people, okay, see, what it is a contest. It's a nonprofit. It's really great. Okay, I'll talk to y'all later. And so it was one of those things where recognizing that you still have to put the time in. You don't get to pick those times. So you have to be willing to allow yourself to say, I'm going to dedicate this time as it continues to progress. Because when it came down to semifinals and going to the Bahamas, all this stuff about thriving and I wanted a new job and your girl got the job. You know, you don't get that many days vacation when you start a new job, and try and explain to them that, well, see, there's this contest and Toastmasters, it's a nonprofit, it really grows. Okay. You had to start to put that into the idea that life is going to keep lifing and your contest is going to have its demands. Recognize that you're willing to make some sacrifices, because otherwise it would be tough to get that far up and have to say, ooh, that doesn't fit with my schedule. And yes, though it was a very amazing experience, I found it at times to be stressful, because now it didn't matter before, but now it really matters. Now the time really matters, because in our club, time, no one really pays attention to that. But now it does. You disqualified yourself. Now it matters. I need to get my impact out. So there's the little certain level of, oh goodness, be a little anxious. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. And then when you don't win, well, what did I do wrong? You start reflecting, was it me, or it was just because someone had a really great speech and that the judges judged that one differently? There's nothing wrong. You get in place. That doesn't mean you had a bad speech. And I find a little frustrating, and this was one of the things that later on I would say I wish about the contest, is sometimes I wish, where did I go wrong, judges? Could you let me know? What was it? What didn't I have? What was it? Was it too much movement? Was it not enough movement? If you don't mind, could I get a little bit more feedback of what you thought? But that's, if I made a perfect world, I would get, but I couldn't. My second one is timer. I wish you didn't get disqualified for timing. I'm okay with you letting points off, but why do I have to have it not count at all? The other subject I would say, let's go break it down into each of these categories. We're looking at content, and that is 50%. And I really wanted to make sure that I brought this to you, because oftentimes we say we want to be in a contest, but we don't even really look at that criteria. We don't look at it. And not that you need to pay attention to it, but just one time to go through it. So I wanted to make sure that we all did it just this one time now. Looking at that, content is 50%. It matters what you're talking about. What does that look like? So we flip over and we can see it's broken down into 3 categories: speech development, effectiveness, speech value. Speech development. I highlighted immediately engage. Of course, you want to make sure you structure around your purpose, and of course, you want to have relevant examples, but immediately engage. You don't want to warm up your audience. You want to come in, knock them out. You may not have to shout detail 10, huh? But you want to make sure that's something impactful. And we talked about it. What about the intros? What are you doing with stories? Are you doing with stats? Are you doing with quotes? I started with a story. It was the summer of 2021, and I was reaching a milestone birthday. I decided to skip the party and pick something epic off my bucket list. Triathlon. Start with something where you want to hear more. You're captivating. Where are you going in that? And practice with different intros. Effectiveness. Essentially, was their interest held? Did they get it? What did they get? Did they get it? Is the subject appropriate? We understand that. How does the speech come across? But was their interest held? And was it meaningful? Was it original to the audience? Did it contribute to their thinking? What are you looking at for those three? So we have questions. Let's talk about the speech content. I think that breaks it down to top three. We have questions about content. Anything that you have some curious things about your content. Immediately engage, structure around a purpose. Is the interest held? Is it meaningful? Sure, Michael.
Right. I know with the contest, there's the criteria.
Wait for the mic.
Okay. I guess I've noticed that we have the criteria for the contest, but kind of an unspoken criteria seems to be that it be a hero's journey. It's a personal story with some motivational takeaway at the end. And that's never really vocalized anywhere, but you don't really see any winning contests without that at the international level.
And I would agree. Though it is almost an unspoken thing, the question is, it doesn't have to be, when you say, I guess, hero's journey, I saw it as who impacted you, why was it impactful, and why do the audience need to know? What or who or what? You know, and then what was it that you learned? What happened? What did you learn? Why did we learn? Again, it was what happened. Was there a story? Was there a thing? Was there a person? Oftentimes a person is always a good one. I saw that when I was doing my research. It was always a person. It was a grandmother. It was a woman on the bus. It was an airplane moment. It was them in the airport. It was them having something that they did. It was a something or someone. You were impacted by it, and now you want to share that moment, how it affected you, how they affected you.
They overcame something.
Exactly. Or overcome that thing. You overcome that thing. For me, I saw that. And so for me, when I started my original speech, the speech that I started and went through my journey, I chose my father. And I had this person that I was able to learn from, and there was experiences with him. I started off with lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing, kind, and good-natured. These are just a few of the characteristics of one of the greats, my dad. He's giving of himself to his friends, his family, and his community. And that love and compassion that he poured into others, he poured into our home. One of the greatest memories I have of my father is when he would take my younger brother and I out for games and activities. Those were the best. But my father had a dark side, one we were not allowed to talk about. For you see, my father was and will always be a sore winner. And then I went on. And I talked about the games that we played and how he would just beat you up on games and beat this. And so for me, it was one of those things where I learned as a kid. That was my moment. And then I had him. He was the one I learned from. Always get up. Do you want to play again? Sure, Dad. And he would play again and he'd beat me again. And it was about learning that lesson. And then so when I came to my adulthood and life's lessons happened, I cleaved to those stories because he beat me then, and I picked myself up and I played again and again and again. What thing, what moment, what did you learn, and why do we need to know? Any other questions? Content, 50%. This is a big subject.
I remember seeing in an interview with Lucille Ball years ago when she said, "There's no new comedy. It's all been done before." One of the key points there is original to the audience. A lot of points have been made over and over again in many speeches over the years. Have you been there? It's not necessarily new, but how did you make what tips do you have to make content original to you? Is it just personal stories, or what recommendations do you have for that?
I would go with, just as you mentioned, personal stories. That's unique to you. Even though you might have done a race, it was different for you. Yours didn't have the same turnaround. You didn't have that same thing. Now, I will admit, I watched all the other speeches that I could remember, at least from a nice good chunk of them. I didn't see anyone doing a race. I didn't see anyone doing a race, so I figured that that might be something that the next group wasn't going to do. So I took the chance that I wasn't going to be speaking about a race, and I'm thinking, well, the odds of someone doing a triathlon and maybe finally getting to those 8 people, how many of them would really have done a triathlon? And I chose to lean in on that one. I chose to lean in on something that was unique to me in a way, and I did look at some of the other ones and start piecing in, because it's always going to be personal for you and how you tell it. As mentioned, have you been there? Others have done that. But have you been there with a triathlon and all this going on and dealing with this and working that? That was a little bit different. Hope that answers the question. Make sense? Good. Now, the fun part. The delivery. Delivery is 30%. So your content is their heaviest weighted thing. But delivery that's the finesse, the beautiful things about it. And it is broken down into 3 categories right there on the back: physical, voice, manner. Body language. Rochelle has been talking about it constantly. It's body language, how you see yourself, and are you utilizing an effective speaking area? And I'll go with this and say that also means online. For me, and as I mentioned, I might have mentioned it before, that my club and all the way up to the regional was strictly online, strictly. So that made important to recognize, to utilize my whole area. It means from this side to this side, and wherever it was. Now we're a lot much bigger than this one. But at the time, and I taped it. I taped it off. I took some blue painter's tape, taped it off. I set up my camera where it was going to be. I made sure my lighting was perfect. I played with my outfit. I wanted to wear a color that was good for my skin tone. I wore a coral, nice, almost orangey, bright color. I then worked with my lighting and what was in my background. I started playing around with the pillows and making sure that my display was looking perfect. I know they don't say they don't judge you on that, but why not have everything flawless? Why not have everything where it's just like, oh, you just want to see me. I just wanted you to look at the camera and go, oh, she's nice to look at. I like that. So at that point, it made me feel confident too, that I had took the time to pay attention to the details. So I was confident that my lighting was good, my outfit was good, my background. I did not use the auto background where it goes into something else, because you fade in and out on that, okay? We like to think that you have a solid background or you have a green screen, unless you have a green screen. If you don't bother. You're better off just showing what's behind you, getting a bare wall, and making sure you're having good internet, because that makes a difference. You want to make sure you're utilizing your entire space appropriately. And your body language. What are you giving? What are we hearing? Are you pacing? Are you taking your time? Are you stopping? Are you looking in? Really practice that. Get feedback. Record yourself. I recorded myself on my Zoom multiple times. And I go, don't like that. Let me do this again. Because as I'm recording, I wanted to make sure I use my whole space. Set record. Lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing. Lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing. I kept at it. Tweaked it here and there. To me, because it was 7 minutes, it needed to be spot on. Some people go off the cuff. By all means, you can do that. But you're asking me for my advice? I made sure I had it down packed, and it was easy to roll off the tongue. So I practiced. The voice, flexible. Again, change in pitch, change in pace, easily heard and understood. Clear pronunciation. Clear, clean, crisp ways to pronounce. So you have to practice. It's going to take some time. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or something to that effect. Give yourself some time to practice your speech. Make it sure that it's easy. I did my first sentence, I don't know how many times. Easygoing, lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing, lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing, lighthearted, charismatic, charismatic, easygoing, lighthearted. I kept at it so that those words fit. It's almost like a song. I wanted to come off like a song, like I'm singing it. Lighthearted, charismatic, easygoing. I wanted it to make sure that it was flow. So that's okay. Take your time working with your voice. Pay attention, record it, hear yourself, record it. Without even the visuals, record your voice so that way, am I wanting to just hear myself more? This is great, I sound great. Enthusiasm, interest, confidence. You're building that with also maybe your outfit, you're feeling confident, get your power move, your power stance. And enthusiasm, smile, light up. You want to be here. You're speaking in I'm here, I'm giving my speech, but I want to be here. You can see it in your eyes, see it in your face. You want to see it in something that you're saying. You want to kind of, So enthusiasm is something that they can read. Questions on delivery. Let's talk about it. What can I help you? What can we break down? What can we help each other with when it comes down to contest and the delivery? You guys are nice going through this. You're seeing what the judges may want. This is what they're showing on the website. This is what we need to talk about. Sure.
I want to know how do you memorize your speech to deliver? Like I got the point where your introduction is memorized. You practice introduction a lot, but after introduction, do you like have an overview or do you have point to point? Because both scenarios I have messed it up. So I want to know how to really deliver in that sense.
I mesmerize my speech. I can't like mesmerize. Oh, this is going to happen all morning. I memorize my speech from beginning to end. It's a contest, and for me, I didn't want to deviate in any way, so I memorized intro, body, and I broke it down in sometimes small little snippets. So I'd memorize this block, okay? Once I got that one settled, I got that block. Made sure I memorized my transitions, blocks, each block. I would start from from the conclusion. I would just work on that, my last 5 minutes, or my last 3 minutes, or my last 2 minutes. I started, even from there, I would start in the middle, just somewhere, wherever. I wanted to make sure I could pick up and go wherever I needed to go. So the entire thing in small little snippets, and to make sure each one was pasted in. Time and each little increments. 1 to 2 minute snippets, I would start to memorize those. And again, whatever word flow, I wanted to make sure that that next word made sense for me, and my mind and my tongue were memorizing it. Questions on that? Yes. Oh, well.
Jocelyn, I'm just curious, when you have to come up with another speech for the world champion, how did you come up with another topic, and how many times have you practiced? I know it's practice, 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 and then how do you memorize it? Because for me, I cannot memorize it, so I outline my speech or in snippets.
Great.
So any tips you can offer?
Absolutely. To your question, I will not have to compete again, and I cannot compete again. It is a one-time deal with the World Championship. So I will be in the history of 2023, and that is where I stay. So I don't have to worry about doing it again, which I have to admit, I was so stressed out, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it again anyway. I was like, it's too much. When it comes down to, so in picking content, I won't have to pick my content again, so I don't have to worry about that either. Again, though, I would say when you're trying to find something, make sure it's personal to you. And I would say even be careful about telling somebody else's story. I had Mark's story, and I decided not to do that for the contest because that was Mark's story. I'd had to divert to mine and how applicable that was to me, and that would take too much time. You only have 7 minutes. And so I chose to use Mark's story for another speech another time and a way to show that you can get unstuck. But I had to use something that was my own. And I had even another story, which was more of a generalized story about respect and understanding where people come from and acknowledging those in the room that may be in the background, doing all the things that help to support you. But again, that was not my own personal story. It was a story, but it wasn't mine. And so to be careful when you're turning around and using something that's not necessarily yours. So make sure you find there's a snippet somewhere in your life that something clicked or dinged or a moment that happened for you. As mentioned, as Rochelle mentioned and others mentioned, pay attention to what's going on around you. What were some of the things that shaped who you were? And maybe leverage that and put that story together. Because this is a contest. This is different. This is for the world. Any other questions, Sharon? No, we're good. Okay.
Hi. My question to you is, if I want to include emotion or drama, would that be part of content or would that be part of delivery?
Yeah, it's delivery. Your
And
content,
then-
your body language. So if you're bringing it, that's your drama, your dramatics, the backstroke. That's
More
dramatic.
so to do with the voice and the gestures.
That's still with it. Depending on how much drama you are, because you're adding the drama for the emphasis, that adds drama. You can do it with quiets or pulse, but that would be part of the delivery.
Yeah, but for emotion to deliver well, there should be a
Oh, yeah.
stronger content.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. You still need a good story. So you're going to want to make sure that's 50%. Your story has to be something that also will emote, regardless of whether or not you're doing all the theatrics. You still need to have a good content story. So if I just read your story, it needs to be a good story. That's where you can find, is there emotion even what you wrote?
Okay.
Without having all that. You'll add the fluff, but is emotion in your in the story?
Okay, so delivery is just enhancing that emotion that already exists.
I believe yes. I believe yes.
Hey, hi. So I want to ask, how many speeches or different speeches rather did you deliver leading up to the world champion? Like, did you use different speeches for every contest in between?
No, I used one speech. That speech took me from club, area, division, district, regional, semi. That was the same one. It was about my dad and the lessons that I learned from my dad. I'm a big daddy's girl, and the fact that he would be so enthralled in our lives and growing up with that, I was of value to me, and I was willing to take that speech. And each time it won, I'm like, oh, it won, okay, it won again. And I just kind of kept moving with the story, but I realized things changed in my delivery. I played around with this. I played around with how I delivered it and what I did here and what I did there, and the more confident I got when I was using my language and my movements. But the story itself, from beginning to end, it was the same story. And even me and my dad, we had an emotional moment, because I remember at district, I called him up because he always wanted to watch. Anytime he could watch, he would log in and watch the story after he found out it was about him. And then he'd watch each time. I remember the last time I said, Dad, if this one doesn't make it, because I knew I wanted to be up on the screen for district, I said, I'm okay with that, because I meant this story. I was glad to go out on this. I was glad to go out on talking about you and how you changed my life and how you impacted that. And when I went through failure, I remember losing to you in these games, and I realized failure does need to happen sometimes. And you get up and you play again. I was emotional. I'm crying, and he started crying. It was a lot. But at the same time, too, I realized I held to that, and I was able to change that. Now, for others, I've talked to the world champions, and I talked to a few, and they were like, oh, no, I changed it every time. I worked on it, I cultivated, I brought it back. People gave feedback, and they just kind of built on it. So it's whatever fits for you. For me, I said, it's winning. Why change it? Changed it a little bit how I deliver because I felt more comfortable.
Yeah, so that was my next question as to how many iterations or the changes or like the drastic changes in the storyline you went with when you were delivering it in different contests.
Maybe one or two, but the storyline stayed the same. The wording stayed the same. The performance, the delivery, that started to change. So if you had to see it written, it was pretty much the same. Really little things were a little different, but for the most part, it was the same speech but that's what changed. Yes. I get up there. I was like, they're passing the mic, so. Oh, and I have to make sure I go to my next slide because I know we're getting closer to the time, but keep on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Since this is a competition,
yeah.
do you open up with like a comedic style, like crack a joke or do an icebreaker? Do you do anything like that, or you just go straight into your delivery?
So some of the quintessential starts you want to be careful with. Sometimes if it's going to be a joke, be careful. Sometimes if it's too overdone, be careful. For me, I just started. I didn't start any of I just started with my story. Or I started with describing my father. So you don't have to have anything just necessarily set in stone, but let it flow and let people kind of get into it. Now, actually, that was changed. After I talked to my mentor and I did everything, I started saying, I did an intro. I want to tell you about somebody so important and who's made and shaped my life. He's kind-hearted, easygoing, charismatic. And my mentor was like, what do you need all that? Just start with who he is. I thought, oh, okay, that's probably right. That's probably right. And that's where he went. I think I took her advice and kept on going. Yes. Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to share something really with everyone. I've been hearing the word memorization a lot, but I haven't heard the word internalization. That's what you want. It's not about rote memorization and then repeating it like a parrot when you get up for your turn in the contest. It has to be organic. You have to know it so well that it's inside of you, and it is you. It just comes out in the most natural, excited, authentic way possible. And that's not memorization. That's when you really own it. You really believe in what your message is, and you want to share it. You've got something to share.
Yeah.
And that's what I encourage you all to aim for, not rote memorization. Thanks.
Let me go on, and then we can take some more questions. 'Cause I don't want to lose our timing, but because that way we can keep moving. For the language, so for this one, appropriateness, correctness. Do the words fit the occasion? And for correctness, proper use of grammar. This can be tricky. Watch your choice of words. Don't try to get big words and you're losing people. But don't try to do too small and you're pretty. We could do better. A nice balance, and of course, proper use of grammar. And that happens for even some of us, is that we relaxed and we practiced, and so we're relaxed, but now we're having conversations, and we don't speak sometimes in the best grammatical way. So slow down, so that way you can have good pronunciation and good use of grammar structure. Language, I find that one to be not as much. But with you doing reviewing, editing, and tweaking, and taking that to your clubs, that's an easy fix that people can hear, and we can kind of tweak away. But again, you're going to want to record yourself. Record yourself. Hear yourself. Allow others to hear it, so that way they're hearing your proper use of grammar. All right, this is the one. International Speak Contest is 5 to 7 minutes. This is your time. Your sweet spot is 6 minutes. Disqualification, that means no matter what you spoke about and how impactful it was, you have people crying, you got people changing lives, it doesn't matter. You are over, you are under, you are not going to be judged. You are disqualified. They won't even let us know where you might have stood. You could have been like, well, where was I? Judge, could you at least tell me would I have been second? It doesn't matter. You are disqualified. They say the sweet spot is 6 minutes. Full disclosure, I never made 6 minutes. I kept trying to get to 6 minutes. I was tweaking and working 6 minutes, but I was at 7. And anytime I stumbled on my speech or I got tongue-tied and got a little tripped up, I made it to 7 minutes and 15, 7 minutes 20. And then I was even more nervous because I knew I had to be able to flow. And I didn't want to get too tripped up on something or go too far to the left on something. I wanted to stay within my story. I will say this. We are talking about memorization, and to your point, you do want to internalize your story because this is your story. And if you do get flipped up, you know where you're going because you know what happened. You know what was going on with that. So there is a part of making sure that you can still tell the story if you had more time or if you had less time. Could you still give this story, the bits and the pieces that matter? So challenge yourself, maybe even cutting it shorter here and there, that you just got the story out in between during your practice, but still make sure you get your 6 minutes. Questions about timing? Questions about timing? One thing I will say this when it comes down to your time. Try to get as much response to your speech as you can because your audience reactions sometimes throws you off. I practiced that speech when I turned around and got on my back and did the backstroke. When I got to the Bahamas, before I got a couple little chuckles, the Bahamas, it was an outright roar. It was an applaud. I was like, an applaud? Oh, no. I don't have time for applaud. I just made 7 minutes, 15 seconds when I practiced. I had to step on the laughter, which I hate, but I had to. And I had pauses where I said, have you been there? I would have loved to have held on to that a little longer. I tried not to look at any of the reviews when people talk about your speech and you're looking at some of the reviews. But I remember hearing most people, and I agreed with it. I wish I had paused a little bit longer. I wanted to pause for the impact. I'll talk about the pause. I put it in there. But I had 7 minutes. I didn't have enough time. And so now I'm worried about my time. And I didn't take into account to what the audience was going to say and how they were going to throw me off. So try as much as you can, different audiences, different dynamics, cultural groups, see what the response may be. As many people as you can, get it out there as you start to move forward if you're going to be doing it live. Because that's the one thing. When you're doing it on the screen, you don't know who's laughing. You didn't even know you were that funny. Oh, they laughed. The first time I heard people respond to my speech was at the district, and they played it. And I said, oh, you guys thought that was funny. I didn't even think that was funny. Oh, okay, yeah, you're right. But I had never, and at the time when you're recording, you're just continuing on. I didn't have to worry about your laughs. But now, all of a sudden, I had to start putting that in there when I went to semifinals. I had to account for laughter. That throws your time off. That's the one thing about competitions. It's like, it's still a good speech. Be careful. These are my opinions, of course. You can choose to do whatever you want. Again, be your authentic self. If you want to talk about something, by all means. But I would say be careful about Toastmasters references. We are all Toastmasters. If I drop the thing about word of the day, you don't get it. If I say table topics, who doesn't here now? The world doesn't. If I start dropping the names, presidents or past world champions, you are subject to get yourself people not understanding you. Be very careful. You can do whatever you want. I would suggest leave that out. Or give reference to who that is. But mind you have 7 minutes. Do we have time to be breaking down who that is and why they're important? Try to stay within a general audience and don't make it so specific to Toastmasters. Now this one. Politics, religion, and very current events. Your subject matter. I'm strong in my faith. And I know people that take on that time to express themselves and have this moment. You do have an amazing platform. And if you choose to do so, by all means, that's where you want. And that's what's speaking to you. Be true to yourself. But recognize you're trying to reach as many people. And people may not share your views, your faith, your political preferences, and you will lose your audience. And if you're not speaking to the entire world, are you world champion? Be careful. And the current events is how current, and recognizing where in recurrency, because again, this is happening all over the world. If this is only happening, let's say in Jersey, if I was having a reference point, you'd go, what? I don't know what's going on over there. Be careful. Your video and technical difficulties. Ooh, I cannot stress this one enough. I have seen pretty good speeches, and the judges say, this is just between me and you and some of the hybrids, that they are not going to judge when you start to have technical difficulties. They say that. But you're in the midst of your speech, and I'm sorry, what? You're not going to go back. You didn't know. The judges have to now judge and assume that that was impactful. Yeah, it wasn't impactful. They're going to say that part probably wasn't impactful. And they'll go to the next person that gave an impactful speech without the hiccups. So be very careful. Practice on that Wi-Fi. Utilize that Wi-Fi to make sure that this is a good, clear one. Make sure the bill is paid. Make sure things are set up into effect so that way you know this is a good spot to be in. If you're in a whole nother place, and mind you, we already talked about how you had to fit the time in no matter what. So I had to leave for the bridal shower to go to another person's home because I couldn't go to my home and to do the recording. Well, now I had to make sure I got there a day before, ran her Wi-Fi, did the lighting, made sure all that was good and content. So that way, when I got ready to do my recording in a new place, I had already set myself up so I knew that this was a safe place for me to record. Because sure enough, during that contest, somebody had technical issues. And I felt for the brother. I was like, ooh, again, it was bad. And everyone kept trying to say, well, you can see it, what? I can't see. It was pretty bad. Props. I had mentioned this before. Be careful. I want this chair here because I want to tell Mark's story. But if that chair is not there, oh goodness, could I have still been able to tell his story? You don't want your prop to speak for you. You want to speak and allow your prop to help you with your story, but you don't want it to speak for you. You don't want it to distract from your story. That if your prop wasn't there, would we even know what you're talking about? Be careful. People used a lot of props my year. And the top 3 were people that didn't use a prop. They were really good props. I didn't even really know you could do that extent. I mean, one girl had like a full ice cream truck looking thing. It was pretty good. I was impressed. I was like, wow. And she had a good speech, but I realized there were a lot of little things here and there that, be careful. But she still had good content, but her prop, I don't know. I can't speak on whether or not it took away or brought in, but all I know is that be careful when it comes to props. Death, injury. There are some subjects that are, I don't want to say overused, but often they are done enough where it starts to play on the idea with how original are we working with on this, because it has been done. Mind you, I am, again, giving you the authentic, you can do you. If this was something that impacted you and this happened and your life was changed, this is your place to, if you want to give that out, that's fine. But recognizing that, be careful. Some people may not see it as original as you may think it is. One gentleman poured his heart out. Was talking about how he was standing over the grave of his father. It was intense. I was like, bruh, this is intense. But he was talking about how he changed and how he became a better father and how he learned from this. And even though his dad wasn't that, he could. But so he came to this grave to make amends. It was pretty heavy. But I don't think it reached the people that he was expecting it to. By all means, though, it still was his chance to let that out, but be careful. Just be careful. Again, using a non-personal story. Touchy subject. So again, where am I? Where am I at? All these things. Okay. Yeah, using a non-personal story. I would say, I had a lot of people ask me, was the triathlon real? A lot of people. Did you really do that? Did you really flip over on your back? Did someone really? I'm like, absolutely. I only took the liberties of cutting that story short. Everything happened on that story. I had lifeguards more than one tell me, you might want to quit. You need to get out. What are you doing? Her over here. She's this one. She's not getting out. Watch her. And I could see that were parts of my story that I decided to leave out. And true, the details of which, did you need to know? Am I using some of my artistic liberties to paint a different type of picture, a little bit here and there? However, you're still the meat, the potatoes. That story was true. And it was easier for me to emote. It was easier for me to remember. It was easier for me to write because it was me. It happened to me. It made it a lot easier. And be careful when you're using a non-personal story. Again, you can use someone else's story, but it takes, I think, a little bit more time to build up someone else's story. And it's not the same. How can you be an expert on someone else's life, someone else's testimony, unless you build you into it, where I'm not an expert on what Mark went through. I'm an expert on what I went through, but I was allowed to use his story as a motivator and how what happened to him was eerily similar to what happened to me. It broke down me. I didn't break down him until the end. But recognizing that's the difference. Using a non-personal story, you got 7 minutes, people. Competitions make you better. They always, always make you better, even if your competitor wins. Carlos Slim. All right. And the cheesy last questions. Let's get them. Let's go through. Or we are 3 o'clock. I know we got the ice cream show, so we made it exactly at 3. So, ooh.
What do you suggest as a combination of story versus moral or teaching in a speech?
Definitely put the story. Definitely put the story. More story. And then end on the moral. You really want to end, because you're not ending on a story, but you're ending on the moral. And find a story that gives you some of those morals that are weeded in there. Finding a good story that gives you that, ooh, see, you guys see what happened with that? And so I would definitely say put the story in there. Everyone loves stories. If you watch them, everyone's doing stories.
Hi, Jocelyn. I really love your delivery and how you move your hand gesture and your body movement. But for people who are a little bit more introvert like myself, how do I improve my delivery but still be my authentic self?
I feel like that's the golden question that I seem to be, because I know that delivery is tricky. And when you're an introvert or you're nervous, it's hard. I would say, and as mentioned, recording yourself when you're comfortable, recording yourself when something that you're familiar with talking, and giving yourself the liberty of just trying to speak as if you normally would. I'm going to talk to you about, I'm trying to think, I'm drawing a blank right now, but I'm talking to you about something that's common for you. If I were to talk with someone about, oh my God, I'm grabbing a blank. Give me something. Someone give me something. Give me something I can talk about.
Hiking.
Hiking. There we go. California, I go with my friend and we hike. It was a mountain. It's pretty high. Halfway there, I get so tired. I need water. We realize we left the water back in the car. So you're doing something, you're talking about something that you like, and you're just kind of giving small little gestures as you're almost talking you through it. I was hiking, so you move. I was tired. Water's back in the car. You're giving just small little snippets that's showing you as you're giving your story. Try to go as, I say small, start small. And then you can get dramatic if you want to get dramatic. I was hiking. I left the water back in the car. And so when you go too far, is it too dramatic? Yeah. So start small, start little, start just small little snippets and record yourself. Bring your movement with you as you tell the story. I hope that was helpful. Starting small. Okay. Who's doing what? And are we able to take more questions? Okay. All right.
All right. First of all, thank you for the whole session.
Sure.
So I had actually a pretty similar question. So like when I'm giving a speech, or like it's similar for a lot of other people, there's certain gestures you're doing naturally, but when I see you doing that, it seems very deliberate and very planned. So like what I want to understand is when you're preparing for the speech, like how much do you let your, let's say, body language flow naturally, and how much do you like deliberately practice that at this point I'm literally going to do this or that or that?
For me, again, this is on me. And doing a speech where I'm not on a competition and I'm not on a stage, I chose to practice my movements. I chose to be sure of where I put my hand and how I chose to bring something up. I was playing around with that, and I just wanted to see how did it properly convey a message. For some, it seemed to flow. For others, it seemed very dramatic. But I was willing to take the risk that it was going to be a little bit over dramatic, because I wanted the back of the room, I wanted everyone to clearly see what it was that I was going to be. So if I do clearly see, no, I wanted to clearly see what it was going to be. I chose to go that route. It may not work for some, but for me, I practiced every movement that I was going to do because I wanted it to hit its point, hit its mark. I chose to go that route. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. My question is, when you gave us, or when you first started out, did you struggle with the emotion part of it? You're telling a story about your father, and it seems to be my default area. I know that it also can challenge me to seek my strength in that, but did you ever have challenges with the emotion part of it? Because giving my speech, I got emotional, and I knew it took away from my speech.
Oh,
What's your...
why do you think it took away?
Because I had never spoken about it.
Ah. I don't struggle necessarily with the emotion part of it. And actually, when I was writing my first one, I got emotional as I wrote it. And I wanted to still put that emotion out there. And for me, it was a little dramatic, so I didn't see the same kind of emotion that I was. But I remember having emotion when I wrote it. I was like, man. I got vulnerable, and I remembered my dad, giving me advice after I had like a failure. And I remember being like, thank you for being there for me. And I allowed myself to feel that way. But I would say, so I didn't struggle with the emotion. I wanted that to be conveyed in the speech. And I augmented it up a bit because I wanted you to really be clear. I struggled with that. And I was having a moment, and I wanted you to know that this was really a moment for me. I struggled. This happened in my story. I turned it up a notch. Yeah.
My question is in regards to nervousness. This is my first time doing Toastmasters, and my nervousness is in my voice and just nervous energy in my hands. How did you overcome that, and does it just like happen? Does it get better over time, practicing, or is there like a shift in mindset that you have?
Fellow Toastmasters.
Practice.
You practice. It gets like that. You practice, and you start to realize people are looking at you. All right. And it gets a little bit better, and you start to work it a little bit more. You start to play on your eye contact. You start to try to remember what you were saying, because now that person's looking at you. Oh my goodness, does he sleep in the back? Oh, okay. So you're still practice. And yes, slow down. And because it wobbles. Your voice starts to wobble. Your hands shake. You ever have that one? Oh, man. It's like, oh, I have to put the notes in this hand. Okay, put the notes down. Yes. And we have nerves. And practice. You good?
I got a question.
Oh, okay. We taking one more, or we can
This will
wrap
be
it
the
up?
last question,
Okay.
please.
Jocelyn, get into competition as a personal choice.
Yes.
You inspire me.
Yay!
I want to grow, I want to learn. But as a club officer, how do you convince your club member to actually participate?
It took me a little bit too, because my club officer was like, "Go for it." No, not yet. I think having contests, having people go to contests, go to district, I can say what worked for me was I saw that it humanized it. When I saw people like me, people that I'd seen at the district, stand up and do their speech, and I was like, "Wow." These are normal people. This is not this big auspicious stage and all this going on. And they're like, thank you, contest chair. And all this stuff like that. Take it down a notch. So allowing people to see the contest on a lower level, I think allows people to recognize that they can do it. So one, I would say, find out where the hesitation seems to be. Is it because they're nervous, they don't think they're good enough? Is it because they don't know how impactful this will be in this process? Start to maybe speak on some of that. Have someone, of course, talk about how world champions and contests make a difference. There's information that's out there or people that have spoken about it. I know other world champions are talking about it. I know I'm not the only one, but how impactful the contest was for them, how winning made a difference and taking out there. And it was more so the journey throughout that process, and not just the win, but the journey and what they learned about themselves, how impactful that was. Because that's what learned it for me. Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful experience.